Hi everyone. I'm going to start a short book today because we're about to have spring break and we'll be gone for a week. So I'm going to read Frog and Toad Together by Arnold Lobel. I'm going to read two of the stories today and then two of the stories after we get back from break. All right, you may be familiar with this, but Frog and Toad is always a fun series. Okay, I'm going to read you two stories. The first one is called A List, and the second one is called The Garden. A List. One morning, Toad sat in bed. "I have many things to do," he said. "I will write them all down on a list so that I can remember them." Toad wrote on a piece of paper, "A list of things to do today." Then he wrote, "Wake up." "I have done that," said Toad, and he crossed out, "Wake up." Then Toad wrote other things on the paper. A list of things to do today. Wake up, eat breakfast, get dressed, go to Frog's house, take walk with Frog, eat lunch, take nap, play games with Frog, eat supper, go to sleep. There's his list. And here's the picture of Toad. "There," said Toad. "Now my day is all written down." He got out of bed and had something to eat. Then Toad crossed out, "Eat breakfast." Toad took his clothes out of the closet and put them on. Then he crossed out, "Get dressed." Toad put the list in his pocket. He opened the door and walked out into the morning. Soon Toad was at Frog's house. He took the list from his pocket and crossed out, "Go to Frog's house." There he is, getting dressed and heading off to Frog's house. There's Frog. Toad knocked at the door. "Hello," said Frog. "Look at my list of things to do," said Toad. "Oh," said Frog, "that is very nice." Toad said, "My list tells me that we will go for a walk." "All right," said Frog, "I am ready." Frog and Toad went on a long walk. Then Toad took the list from his pocket again. He crossed out, "Take walk with Frog." Just then there was a strong wind. It blew the list out of Toad's hand. The list blew high up into the air. "Help!" cried Toad. "My list is blowing away. What will I do without my list?" "Hurry," said Frog. "We will run and catch it." "No," shouted Toad. "I cannot do that." "Why not?" asked Frog. "Because," wailed Toad, "running after my list is not one of the things that I wrote on my list of things to do." Frog ran after the list. He ran over hills and swamps, but the list blew on and on. At last Frog came back to Toad. "I am sorry," gasped Frog, "but I could not catch your list." "Blah," said Toad. "I cannot remember any of the things that were on my list of things to do. I will just have to sit here and do nothing," said Toad. Toad sat and did nothing. Frog sat with him. After a long time, Frog said, "Toad, it is getting dark. We should be going to sleep now." "Go to sleep," shouted Toad. "That was the last thing on my list." Toad wrote on the ground with the stick, "Go to sleep." Then he crossed out, "Go to sleep." "There," said Toad. "Now my day is all crossed out." "I am glad," said Frog. Then Frog and Toad went right to sleep. I think Toad's a little bit silly. Okay, story number 2 is called The Garden. This is one of my favorite Frog and Toad stories. Frog was in his garden. Toad came walking by. "What a fine garden you have, Toad." "What a fine garden you have, Frog," he said. Sorry. "Yes," said Frog, "it is very nice, but it was hard work." I wish I had a garden, said Toad. Here are some flower seeds. Plant them in the ground, said Frog, and soon you will have a garden. How soon? Asked Toad. Quite soon, said Frog. Wow, look at Frog's beautiful garden. Toad ran home. He planted the flower seeds. Now seeds, said Toad, start growing. Toad walked up and down a few times. The seeds did not start to grow. Toad put his head close to the ground and said loudly, Now seeds, start growing. Toad looked at the ground again. The seeds did not start to grow. Do you think Toad understands how seeds work? Do seeds come up right away, right after you plant them? That's pretty silly. I'm going to show you this picture. Toad put his head very close to the ground and shouted, Now seeds, start growing! Frog came running up the path. What is all this noise? He asked. My seeds will not grow, said Toad. You are shouting too much, said Frog. These poor seeds are afraid to grow. I'm not sure if I agree with Frog either. What about you? My seeds are afraid to grow? Asked Toad. Of course, said Frog. Frog's giving Toads a little advice about seeds. Of course, said Frog. Leave them alone for a few days. Let the sun shine on them. Let the rain fall on them. Soon your seeds will start to grow. That night, Toad looked out of his window. Drat, said Toad. My seeds have not started to grow. They must be afraid of the dark. Toad went out into his garden with some candles. I will read the seeds a story, said Toad. Then they will not be afraid. Toad read a long story to his seeds. There he is in the dark with his candles, reading a story. And that's kind of sweet. All the next day, Toad sang songs to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad read poems to his seeds. And all the next day, Toad played music for his seeds. Toad looked at the ground. The seeds still did not start to grow. What shall I do? Cried Toad. These must be the most frightened seeds in the whole world. Then Toad felt very tired, and he fell asleep. Look. Toad, Toad, wake up, said Frog. Look at your garden. Toad looked at his garden. Little green plants were coming up out of the ground. At last, shouted Toad, my seeds have stopped being afraid to grow. And now you will have a nice garden too, said Frog. Yes, said Toad, but you were right, Frog. It was very hard work. Now, do you think that when Toad said growing a garden is very hard work, when Frog said growing a garden is very hard work in the beginning, do you think that he meant the kind of hard work that Toad was doing? Talking to his seeds, reading stories at night to his seeds, singing songs to his seeds, reading poems, playing music? Is that how you get a garden to grow? I'm going to think about that. All right, thank you. I'll see you next time with some more Frog and Toad stories from Frog and Toad Together.